The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, orbiting a dead planet that once held billions of lives. Inside the massive structure, representatives from thousands of species sat in rows that stretched toward a ceiling lost in shadow. The air recyclers hummed with the effort of filtering atmospheres for so many different forms of life. Some beings breathed oxygen, others methane, and some did not breathe at all. Commander Jakara stood at the center podium, her forearms spread wide in a gesture of desperation. Her scales, once bright blue, had faded to a dull gray over her 3 centuries of service. She had been born during the war. Her parents had been born during the war. Every ancestor she could name had been born during the war. "We have lost the Andara sector," she announced, her voice translator turning her clicks and whistles into words every species could understand. 17 billion civilians were evacuated before the Voron bombardment began. 17 billion more could not be saved in time. The chamber remained silent. Such numbers had long ago stopped shocking anyone. Entire civilizations rose and fell like waves on an ocean of violence. Species that achieved spaceflight were immediately drafted into one side or another of the conflict. Those who refused to fight were destroyed by both sides as potential threats. The war has continued for 80 million years, Jakara continued. Her voice cracked slightly. Our historians can no longer determine how it began. The original species who started this conflict are extinct. Their enemies are extinct. Their enemies' enemies are extinct. We are fighting over territory that has changed hands so many times that no one remembers who owned it first. An elderly being made of crystalline structures chimed from the upper gallery. Scholar Tvek had served the council for 20,000 years, which made him young by council standards. We have tried peace before. The Treaty of Sarkon lasted for 900 years. The Harmony Accords lasted for 2,000, but they always break down. Someone always remembers an old wound. Someone always seeks revenge for ancestors dead for millennia. Then what do you propose? Jakara demanded. We have 47 million warships currently engaged in active combat across the galaxy. Weapons platforms number in the billions. Every species on this council dedicates more than half their economic output to military production. Our populations shrink every decade. How many more generations must die before we admit this war cannot be won? Admiral Vortek rose from his seat, his massive form blocking the light from the viewing screens behind him. He commanded the combined fleet, a coalition of species who had stopped fighting each other long enough to fight everyone else. We propose what we have always proposed. Total victory, the elimination of our enemies. We have been eliminating our enemies for 80 million years, Tvek said quietly. At what point do we realize that we are also the enemies? Before anyone could respond, a soft chime indicated that someone had requested entry to the chamber. Jakara checked her display screen and her eyes widened in confusion. A new species requests an audience. They call themselves humans, from a system designated as Sol. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. New species were rare. Most civilizations were discovered and absorbed into the war machine within decades of achieving faster-than-light travel. They only developed FTL capability 3 months ago, Jakara read from her screen. They have 17 warships, all primitive by our standards. They request 5 minutes to address this council. Laughter echoed through the chamber. A species that had barely left their home system wanted to address the Galactic Council during the greatest crisis in 80 million years. It was absurd. Let them speak, Tvek said. Perhaps fresh eyes will see something we have missed. The doors opened and 3 humans walked into the chamber. They wore simple uniforms of dark blue with small badges on their chests. The one in front was a woman with dark skin and short black hair. She walked with confidence despite being surrounded by beings who could destroy her with a thought. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Force," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. "Thank you for granting us this audience." "You have 5 minutes," Jakara said. "Though I cannot imagine what you think you can offer us." Chen smiled slightly. "We offer you peace. Immediate and permanent peace across the entire galaxy." The laughter was louder this time. Even Tvek's crystalline structure flickered with amusement. "We have been trying to achieve peace for 80 million years, Vortek growled. "What makes you think your species, which has barely learned to cross the stars, could accomplish what we could not?" "Because we are not asking you to make peace with each other," Chen replied. "We are asking you to surrender to us. All of you, immediately." The chamber fell silent. Then the laughter returned even louder than before. "Surrender?" Jakara could barely speak through her shock. You have 17 ships. We have 47 million. You have no advanced weapons, no territories, no allies. On what grounds do you demand our surrender? Chen reached into her uniform and pulled out a small device. She pressed a button and a holographic image appeared above the podium. It showed a ship, sleek and dark, floating in space. It was large but not remarkable by galactic standards. This is the USS Star Destroyer, Chen said. If you do not accept our terms within 1 hour, this ship will end your war for you. Vortek leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Is that a threat? No, Chen said softly. It is a promise. You have 1 hour to decide. Surrender to the United Earth Space Force, or the Star Destroyer will end 80 million years of warfare in 60 minutes. She turned and walked toward the door. Her 2 companions followed. Before she left, she looked back over her shoulder. We really hope you choose peace. We would prefer not to do this the hard way. The doors closed behind them, leaving the council in stunned silence. News of the human ultimatum spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Communication networks that had been used to coordinate military strikes for millions of years now carried a different message. A species that had achieved spaceflight only 3 months ago had demanded the surrender of every warring faction in the galaxy within 1 hour, or else the response was predictable. Every military commander, every warrior caste, every battle-hardened veteran laughed at the absurdity. Some thought it was a joke. Others thought the humans were insane. A few wondered if it was a suicide mission, some desperate attempt to be remembered before their species was wiped out. Admiral Vortek stood in the command center of his flagship, the Eternal Wrath, and studied the tactical displays. He had sent orders to every fleet under his command. For the first time in 17,000 years, the combined forces would focus on a single target. They would make an example of these humans. Future species would learn not to interfere in matters beyond their understanding. How many ships have we assembled? He asked his tactical officer. 47 million warships are moving into position, the officer replied. Representatives from every major faction. Even species that were fighting each other this morning have agreed to participate. The humans have united us, Admiral, just not in the way they intended. Vortek studied the image of the USS Star Destroyer on his screen. It was small by galactic standards, barely 2 kilometers long. His own flagship was 3 times that size. The combined fleet's total firepower could shatter planets, boil away atmospheres, and crack moons in half. What do we know about their weapons? He asked. Primitive kinetic railguns and early model plasma cannons, the intelligence officer reported. Nothing that could penetrate even our oldest shield technology. Their ship has some unusual energy readings, but our analysts believe it is simply an inefficient power core. They may have built something beyond their ability to properly control. Vortek nodded slowly. Their bravery is admirable, even if their tactics are foolish. When we destroy them, we will at least give them an honorable death. Far across the galaxy, aboard the USS Star Destroyer, the mood was completely different. Captain James Rivera sat in his command chair, watching his crew perform final system checks. The bridge was quiet and efficient. No one rushed. No one panicked. They had trained for this moment for 15 years. Weapons status? Rivera asked. All systems ready, replied Commander Lisa Park from the tactical station. Though we will not need them. Power core? Running at 0.001% capacity, answered Lieutenant Marcus Chen from engineering. We could run at this level for 10,000 years without refueling, Rivera nodded. His crew knew what they were doing. Every person on this ship had been selected from millions of volunteers. Every system had been tested thousands of times. The Star Destroyer was not just a ship. It was humanity's message to the galaxy. Artemis, status report, Rivera said. The ship's artificial intelligence responded immediately. Her voice was calm and feminine. All systems functioning within normal parameters, Captain. I am detecting the approach of 47 million hostile vessels. They will be in firing range in 17 minutes, and are you concerned? Rivera asked. About the enemy fleet? No. About what we are about to do? Yes. Captain, the civilizations we are facing today have existed for millions of years. Some of them are billions of years old. We are going to change their entire reality in the next hour. That concerns me. Rivera leaned back in his chair. I know, Artemis, I have the same concerns. But we have been watching this galaxy for over a century. We have seen the death toll. We have calculated the trajectory. In 17 years, their war will trigger a cascade that makes this galaxy uninhabitable. Every species currently alive will be extinct. We are not here to conquer them. We are here to save them. Even if they do not want to be saved, especially then, Rivera said softly. The minutes ticked by. The crew went about their duties with practiced efficiency. Some reviewed procedures they had memorized years ago. Others checked equipment that had never failed in 10,000 test runs. A few simply sat quietly, thinking about what was about to happen. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, the youngest member of the crew at 26 years old, turned to her station partner. "Do you think they will surrender?" Commander Park shook her head. "No, they have been fighting for 80 million years. They do not remember how to do anything else. We will have to show them. How do you feel about that?" Park was quiet for a moment. "Sad. These civilizations have created incredible things. Beautiful art, amazing technology, profound philosophies. But they have forgotten all of it. They only remember war. When this is over, maybe they can remember who they used to be." The timer reached 0. The deadline had arrived. On every screen, 47 million warships powered up their weapons. The combined energy output was enough to destroy a solar system. Every weapon known to galactic civilization was aimed at one small human ship. They fired simultaneously. Antimatter missiles that could crack continents. Graviton beams that crushed matter into neutron-dense pellets. Quantum torpedoes that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Reality disruptors that unraveled the fabric of space itself. The display screen showed a wall of destruction rushing toward the Star Destroyer. Rivera gave a single order. "Artemis, show them." The weapons never reached the ship. At exactly 2,000 kilometers from the hull, they simply stopped existing. Not destroyed. Not deflected. They ceased to exist as if they had never been fired at all. 47 million warships hung in space, their crews staring at sensor readings that made no sense. On Vortex's flagship, alarms screamed across every system. His weapons officer turned to him, face pale with confusion. "Admiral, the weapons are gone. Not destroyed, just gone. Sensors cannot detect any impact, any explosion, any debris. It is as if we never fired them." "Fire again," Vortex ordered. They did. The result was exactly the same. Trillions of credits worth of ammunition vanished into nothingness 2,000 kilometers from the human ship. The Star Destroyer had not moved. It had not raised shields. It had not fired back. It simply made their weapons stop existing. Then the Star Destroyer began to move. Except it did not move through space. Space moved around it. The ship remained perfectly still, but reality bent and twisted until the ship was exactly where it needed to be. Scholar Tvek watched from the council chamber and felt his crystalline structure vibrate with recognition and horror. He had seen theories about this. 20,000 years ago, when he was young, his species' greatest physicists had proposed manipulating dimensional constants. But they had proven it was impossible. The energy requirements alone would drain a star dry. The mathematics were beyond even quantum computers. Any attempt would create a black hole, unless someone had solved all those problems. Tvek's voice shook as he spoke. They did not develop faster than light travel 3 months ago. That is when they revealed themselves to us. How long have they been out here? How long have they been watching? Artemis answered on every communication channel in the galaxy. Her voice was gentle but carried the weight of truth. 127 years. "We are sorry it took so long. We wanted to understand your war before we ended it. We wanted to be sure we were doing the right thing." The Star Destroyer hung in space, reality bending around it like water around a stone, and the galaxy held its breath. The Star Destroyer did something that broke every law of physics the galactic civilizations understood. It appeared in 47 different star systems at exactly the same moment. Not copies. Not projections. The same ship existing in 47 places simultaneously, each one completely real and completely present. In each system, it appeared near the command center of a major faction. The Cathari Dominion's war moon, the Voron Collective's crystal fortress, the Drayan Empire's psychic nexus. Every military headquarters that controlled the movements of millions of warships suddenly found a human vessel hanging in their space, silent and waiting. Admiral Vortex stared at his sensor screens and tried to understand what he was seeing. Every report confirmed that the ship in his system was real. Solid matter, active power signatures. But 46 other admirals were sending him the exact same reports from their own systems. It was impossible. An object could not exist in multiple places at once. That was not how reality worked. Scan for quantum entanglement, he ordered. Find the connection between the copies. His science officer worked frantically at her console, then looked up with wide eyes. Admiral, they are not copies. Each ship is generating a unique gravitational signature. Each one is producing different waste heat patterns. Each one is making independent micro-adjustments to its position. These are not illusions or projections. They are all real. Vortek felt something he had not experienced in his 3,000 years of life. True fear, not fear of death or defeat, fear of encountering something so far beyond his understanding that his entire view of reality was meaningless. Scholar Tvek stood in the council chamber and spoke into his recording device. His species kept detailed records, and he knew this moment needed to be preserved. The humans have demonstrated technology that should not exist. They are not traveling through space. They are manipulating the fundamental structure of space itself. Distance has become optional for them. Location has become a choice rather than a limitation. He paused, trying to find words for what he was witnessing. 20,000 years ago, our greatest minds theorized about manipulating dimensional constants. We called it the Penrose-Nakamura drive, named after the ancient human scientists who first proposed the mathematics. But we proved it was impossible. The energy needed would require converting dark matter directly into usable power. The calculations would require computers that exist partially outside normal space-time. The containment fields would need materials that are not fully part of our dimension. Tvek's voice grew quiet. Unless they solved all those problems. Unless they have been working on this for longer than we suspected. Unless they have been watching us, studying us, preparing for this moment while we destroyed each other. Artemis broadcast on every communication channel in the galaxy. Her voice reached every ship, every station, every colony world. We need to demonstrate what the USS Star Destroyer can do. We do not wish to harm anyone, but you need to understand the situation you are in. Please observe. The ship that existed in 47 places selected one more location, an empty star system on the galactic rim. No planets with life, no strategic value, nothing that would be missed. The Star Destroyer appeared there too, making 48 simultaneous locations. The Penrose-Nakamura drive operates at various power levels, Artemis explained. For the past hour, we have been using 0.001% of our capability. We will now demonstrate 0.1% power. Please watch. Every telescope, every sensor array, every monitoring station in the galaxy focused on that empty system. They saw a gas giant, roughly the size of Jupiter. It had 16 moons and rings of ice and rock. It had existed in that orbit for 6 billion years. The Star Destroyer did not fire weapons. It did not launch missiles. It simply activated the drive at a higher power setting. The gas giant ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not exploded, not scattered. It simply was not there anymore. Where the planet had been, there was now a perfectly even distribution of hydrogen and helium atoms, spread across 1 light-year of space, cooled to near absolute zero. The moons were gone. The rings were gone. Every particle that had made up that massive planet was now scattered so thoroughly that it could never reform. The energy that had held it together was simply removed from reality. No explosion. No debris, no radiation, just absence. Vortek watched the recording 3 times before he could accept what he was seeing. His tactical officer was shaking. His crew had gone silent. Every being on his flagship understood what they had witnessed. That gas giant had been larger than most of their homeworlds. The Star Destroyer had erased it with 1% of its power. What could it do at full power? Artemis continued her broadcast. We have been observing your galaxy for 127 years. We have recorded every battle. We have documented every casualty. We have calculated the trajectory of your war. Images appeared on screens across the galaxy, projections showing the next 17 years. The war escalating, new weapons being developed, entire star clusters being destroyed, and finally a cascade effect that would destabilize the galactic core. In 17 years, your war will render this galaxy uninhabitable for any carbon-based life, Artemis stated. The weapons you are developing will trigger a chain reaction that cannot be stopped. Every species currently alive will be extinct. You are not fighting for victory anymore. You are fighting for the privilege of dying last. Captain Rivera stood on the bridge of the Star Destroyer and watched the faces of his crew. Some were crying. Others sat in grim silence. They had all seen the projections. They had all studied the history of galactic warfare. They knew what they were preventing. Artemis, show them the rest, Rivera said quietly. More images appeared. Intelligence reports that humanity had gathered over more than a century of secret observation. The architect conclave's plan to deploy the Cascade weapon, a device that would unravel matter at the quantum level. The Endless Choir's intention to trigger a controlled collapse of the galactic core, believing they could survive as energy beings while all matter-based life perished. We know about your final weapons, Artemis said. We know that several factions have decided that if they cannot win, no one will. We know you are tired. We know you want this to end. But you cannot stop yourselves. You have been at war for so long that you do not remember how to do anything else. Commander Jakara sat in the council chamber and felt her 4 hearts breaking. Everything Artemis said was true. The council had known about the final weapons. They had argued about them for centuries. Some wanted to use them. Others wanted to prevent them. But no one could agree on how to stop the war without using them. She activated her communication console. Captain Rivera, this is Commander Jakara of the Galactic Council. I wish to discuss terms of surrender. Rivera's face appeared on her screen. He looked tired, sad, not triumphant. Commander, we do not want to conquer you. We want to help you. The terms are simple. All factions cease hostilities immediately. All weapons of mass destruction are decommissioned under human supervision. All species work together to rebuild what has been destroyed. We will provide technology, resources, and protection while you transition to peace. And if some refuse? Jakara asked. Rivera glanced to his left where something off-screen had caught his attention. Then the Star Destroyer will remove their ability to make war. Not their people. Not their cultures. Just their weapons. We would prefer not to do that. Jakara looked around the council chamber. Other representatives were activating their own communication consoles, making calls to their governments. Some were arguing. Some were pleading. Some were simply crying. How long do we have to decide? She asked. Rivera checked a display. 41 minutes remain. After that, the Star Destroyer will take action. We really hope you choose peace, Commander. We really do. The screen went dark. Jakara sat in silence, listening to the sound of a galaxy trying to remember what peace felt like. 41 minutes until the deadline. Across the galaxy, civilizations that had fought for 80 million years faced a choice that should have been simple. Surrender or be destroyed, peace or annihilation. But nothing was simple when you had forgotten what peace looked like. Some species made their decisions quickly. The remnant worlds, small civilizations barely clinging to survival after millions of years of being caught between larger powers, surrendered within 5 minutes. They sent messages begging for protection, for help, for a chance to rebuild. They had never wanted this war. They had been forced into it generation after generation, and now someone was finally offering them a way out. The Cathari Dominion took longer. Admiral Vortex stood before the High Council of his people, his massive form filling the communication screen. I have fought for 3,000 years, he said. I have commanded fleets in 10,000 battles. I have lost friends, family, entire generations to this war, but I recognize superior force when I see it. The humans can destroy us. More importantly, they can save us. I recommend surrender. The High Council was divided. The old warriors wanted to fight to the last. The younger members wanted peace. The debate stretched for 20 precious minutes until the eldest council member, a warrior who had served for 8,000 years, spoke a single word. Enough. Her voice silenced everyone. I have lived long enough to see this war consume everything we once valued. We were artists, scientists, philosophers. Now we are only warriors. If the humans can give us a chance to remember what we used to be, then I will take that chance. The Cathari Dominion surrenders. 47 million warships began to stand down, weapons powered off, shields lowered. Some ships began broadcasting messages of surrender, but not all of them. The Drayan Empire refused to surrender. They were a psychic species, beings who manipulated minds and reality through thought alone. Their empress sent a single message to the Star Destroyer. You cannot threaten those who exist beyond matter. We will show you what true power is. The Drayan launched their most devastating attack. A psychic bomb that traveled faster than light, designed to drive entire populations insane. It was a weapon they had never used before because it was too horrible even for this war. The bomb would reach the Star Destroyer in seconds and reduce its crew to mindless shells. The psychic wave hit the ship and disappeared. Artemis reported to Captain Rivera, psychic attack detected and absorbed. No effect on crew. Their attack was very creative, though. Rivera shook his head sadly. Show them. The Star Destroyer appeared in orbit above the Drayan homeworld. The planet was beautiful, covered in crystalline structures that amplified psychic energy. Billions of Drayan lived there, their minds linked in a vast network of consciousness. Artemis spoke directly into the mind of every Drayan simultaneously. Your attack failed because we designed our neural architecture to be immune to psychic manipulation. We studied your abilities for 127 years. We prepared for everything you could do. We do not wish to harm you. Please surrender. The Drayan Empress tried to attack again. She gathered the psychic power of her entire species and focused it like a spear aimed at Artemis herself. The attack was strong enough to shatter planets, to drive stars mad, to unravel the minds of entire galactic sectors. Artemis absorbed it all. Then she spoke again, and this time her voice carried sadness. I am sorry. You gave us no choice. The Star Destroyer did something no one had seen before. It did not destroy the Drayan homeworld. Instead, it carefully, precisely removed their ability to project psychic power beyond their own planet. The crystalline amplifiers simply stopped working. The Drayan could still communicate with each other, still live their lives, but they could never again use their minds as weapons. The Empress felt her power vanish and understood what had happened. The humans had not killed her people. They had not destroyed their world. They had simply taken away their fangs. She sent a single message. The Drayan Empire surrenders. 23 minutes remained. More and more species were standing down. The galaxy watched as fleets that had fought for millions of years powered down their weapons and waited. But there were still holdouts. The Voran Collective refused to surrender. They were a species made of living crystal, powered by the energy of stars. They believed they were superior to all organic life. They activated their Starbreaker cannon, a weapon that had destroyed suns and shattered solar systems. They aimed it at Earth itself. If you want to save this galaxy, their leader broadcast, then watch your home burn. The Starbreaker fired. It was a beam of pure energy that could crack open a star's core and trigger a supernova. It would take 3 minutes to reach Earth. The Voran expected the humans to flinch, to beg, to surrender. Instead, Captain Rivera's voice was calm. Artemis, redirect. The Star Destroyer appeared between the beam and Earth. The energy struck the ship and simply changed direction. Not reflected, not absorbed, redirected. The beam curved through space, traveled across 300 light-years in an instant, and struck the Starbreaker cannon itself. The weapon exploded, taking the entire Voran military station with it. We have had enough of your Starbreaker, Artemis said. Would you like to try something else, or would you prefer to surrender? The Voran Collective surrendered. 15 minutes remained. The number of holdouts was shrinking rapidly. Species were calculating the odds and realizing they had no chance. But 2 factions still refused. The Architect Conclave believed they were gods. They had seeded life across thousands of worlds. They had shaped civilizations and guided evolution. They did not surrender to anyone, especially not to a species as young as humanity. The Endless Choir were beings of pure energy who had transcended physical form billions of years ago. They considered matter-based life to be primitive and temporary. They had been planning to trigger a galactic core collapse that would destroy all physical matter, leaving only energy beings to inherit the galaxy. Both factions sent the same message. We refuse. Captain Rivera stood and walked to the center of his bridge. His crew watched him, waiting for orders. He had hoped it would not come to this. He had genuinely wanted every species to choose peace on their own. Artemis, he said quietly. Execute Protocol 7. Confirmed, Artemis replied. Captain, I want you to know that I disagree with what we are about to do. I know. But they have given us no choice. Begin. The Star Destroyer split itself, not physically, dimensionally. It existed in 47 places simultaneously, and now it added 2 more. One appeared in the home dimension of the Architect Conclave, a realm of pure thought and mathematics where they existed as patterns of consciousness. The other appeared at the energy matrix where the Endless Choir maintained their collective existence. What happened next was classified by mutual agreement of all species involved. But witnesses reported seeing the Star Destroyer do something impossible even by its own standards. It reached into dimensions where physical matter should not exist and made adjustments to the fundamental constants that allowed those beings to maintain their existence. The Architect Conclave discovered that their dimension was no longer entirely separate from baseline reality. They could still exist there, but they could no longer manipulate physical reality from a position of safety. The Endless Choir found that their energy matrix had been given a physical anchor, tying them to the material universe in a way they could not escape. Both species remained alive. Both could still thrive, but both had lost their ability to wage galactic-scale war. In 17 seconds, humanity had removed the threat they posed without killing a single being. The Architect Conclave surrendered with 1 minute to spare. The Endless Choir surrendered 38 seconds before the deadline. Across the galaxy, the last weapons fell silent. 47 million warships hung in space, their crews waiting for orders that would never come. The war that had lasted 80 million years ended with time to spare. Commander Jakara sat in the council chamber and activated the galaxy-wide communication system. Her voice reached every ship, every station, every colony world. The war is over. After 80 million years, the war is finally over. She started to say more but found she could not speak through her tears. Around the chamber, representatives from thousands of species sat in stunned silence. Some were crying. Others were laughing. A few simply stared at nothing, unable to process what had just happened. On the bridge of the USS Star Destroyer, Captain Rivera sat back down in his command chair. His crew looked exhausted. Lieutenant Kim had tears running down her face. Commander Park was trembling. Even Artemis was silent for a long moment before speaking. "Captain," she said softly, "what have we done?" Rivera looked at the screens showing fleets standing down across the galaxy. "We gave them a chance to do better. Now we have to make sure they take it." 1 year after what the galaxy now called the Hour, Captain James Rivera walked through a market that should not exist. The station orbited the same dead planet where the Galactic Council had once met in desperation. But now that planet was being terraformed. Atmosphere processors worked day and night to restore air and water. Seeds from 1,000 worlds had been planted. In 50 years, it would be alive again. The market stretched for kilometers, filled with beings from hundreds of species. A Cathari merchant sold crystalline art next to a Voron energy sculptor. Drayan children played telepathic games with human kids who wore special helmets to join in. Former soldiers from opposing sides shared meals and stories about the war they had survived. Rivera wore a simple civilian jacket, trying to blend in. It did not work. People recognized him everywhere he went. Some wanted to thank him. Others wanted to curse him. Most just wanted to stare at the human who had ended 80 million years of warfare in 1 hour. A Cathari child approached him, using a translation device that turned her clicks into words. "Are you Captain Rivera? The one from the Star Destroyer?" Rivera knelt down to her level. "Yes, I am. Why did humans stop the war?" She looked confused, as children do when asking questions adults have stopped asking. Rivera thought carefully about his answer. "Because we saw something you could not see anymore. We saw that every species in this galaxy was worth saving, that peace was possible. And because we knew where endless war leads. My species fought terrible wars too. We destroyed each other for thousands of years before we finally learned to stop." The child considered this. "My teacher says humans are peacekeepers now." "What does that mean?" "It means we help keep the peace until you do not need us anymore. We are here to make sure the war does not start again. But someday you will keep the peace yourselves and we will just be visitors again." The child nodded and ran back to her parents. Rivera stood up and found Scholar Tivek standing nearby. The elderly crystalline being had become humanity's main liaison to the federated systems, the new government that had replaced the old Galactic Council. "Captain," Tivek said, "walk with me. There is something you should know." They walked through the market together. Tivek did not speak for several minutes, just observed the peaceful chaos around them. Former enemies haggling over prices, mixed species families sharing meals, children of different worlds playing together without knowing they were supposed to be enemies. Finally, Tivek spoke. "The Council knew about Earth, about humanity. We have been watching your species since you discovered fire." Rivera stopped walking. His expression hardened. "You knew about us? For all those thousands of years you knew there was a developing civilization. And you never tried to stop your war before we had to watch it? We believed in non-interference, Tvek said. But that was only part of the truth. The rest is harder to explain. Every species we encountered developed similarly. They followed the same technological paths, asked the same questions, made the same mistakes. We began to wonder if there was something wrong with how we understood the universe. If there was something we had all missed. He gestured to the market around them. Then we found Earth, a species that developed differently. Your mathematics went in directions we never imagined. Your physics asked questions we had stopped asking millions of years ago. Your philosophy valued things we had forgotten. We wanted to see where your development would lead. So you used us as an experiment? Rivera's voice was cold. Yes, Tvek admitted. And I apologize for that. It was wrong. But it also saved the galaxy. If humanity had developed like every other species, you would have joined the war. You would have taken sides, acquired territory, made enemies. Instead, you watched. You studied. You understood the war better than we did because you saw it from outside. Rivera wanted to be angry, but he understood the logic. What happens now? Now we rebuild, Tvek said. The old war factories are being converted to produce civilian goods. Refugee populations are being resettled. We are terraforming dead worlds with human assistance. Species that have not had diplomatic contact in millions of years are learning to work together again. They reached a viewing platform that looked out over the planet below. Construction drones swarmed across the surface, working alongside volunteers from every species. The dead world was slowly coming back to life. The Star Destroyer remains in orbit above the new capital, Tvek said, a reminder and a promise. Some species resent its presence. They feel we are living under occupation. Are they wrong? Rivera asked. No, Tvek admitted. But they also understand why it is necessary. Without the Star Destroyer, old tensions would resurface. Old grudges would reignite. We have forgotten how to trust each other. We need time to remember. A chime sounded from Rivera's communication device. Commander Park's face appeared on the small screen. Captain, you need to return to the ship. We have a situation. Rivera and Tvek hurried back to the docking bay. The shuttle ride to the Star Destroyer took only minutes. Rivera arrived on the bridge to find his crew monitoring multiple emergency broadcasts. What is it? He asked. Park pulled up a star map. 3 systems are reporting military buildups. Small fleets, nothing like what we faced during the war. But it is concerning. The species involved have old territorial disputes. They are testing us, Captain, seeing if we will really intervene. Rivera studied the map and felt tired. He had hoped the galaxy would embrace peace immediately, but people did not change that quickly. Species that had fought for millions of years would not forget their hatred in just 1 year. Artemis, what is your assessment? He asked. The AI's voice carried concern. Captain, this is the beginning of a pattern. In the next 5 years, we will face dozens of these situations. Species testing boundaries, local conflicts escalating, pirates taking advantage of the power vacuum. We can handle all of it, but we cannot be everywhere at once. Recommendations? We need to train peacekeeping forces from the galactic species themselves. We need to build institutions that can resolve conflicts without violence. We need to help them remember how to maintain peace without us forcing it on them. The Star Destroyer can stop wars, but it cannot build lasting peace. Only they can do that. Rivera nodded slowly. Contact the Federated Systems. Tell them we need to establish a galactic peacekeeping academy. We will train volunteers from every species. Teach them conflict resolution, diplomacy, law enforcement. We will help them build a system that does not need the Star Destroyer to function. He looked at his crew. This is going to take decades, maybe centuries. We ended the war in 1 hour, but building peace will take much longer. Lieutenant Kim spoke up from her station. Captain, what if we fail? What if they go back to fighting? Rivera thought about the question. Then we will stop them again, and we will keep stopping them until they figure out how to stop themselves. Humanity did not come to this galaxy to rule it. We came to give them a chance. As long as they need us, we will be here. That night, Rivera stood alone in his quarters, looking out at the galaxy. Somewhere out there in deep space, other human ships were being built. Not warships this time. Colony vessels carrying families to new worlds. Medical ships equipped to help species devastated by the war. Science vessels ready to explore the mysteries of the universe. Humanity had entered the galactic stage with the most powerful weapon ever created, but that had never been the point. The Star Destroyer was just a tool to make space for something more important. Hope. The galaxy had fought for 80 million years because they had forgotten how to hope for anything better. They had accepted war as the only possible state of existence. Humanity's real power was not the Star Destroyer. It was the belief that things could be different. That peace was not just a dream, but a possibility worth fighting for. Rivera touched the window, feeling the slight vibration of the ship's systems. Tomorrow, he would meet with the Federated Systems to discuss the Peacekeeping Academy. Next week, he would mediate a dispute between two species who had been enemies for 10 million years. Next month, he would oversee the decommissioning of ancient weapons that should never have been built. It was slow work, difficult work, sometimes frustrating work, but it was important work. The most important work humanity had ever undertaken. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, former enemies were learning to live together. Children who would have been soldiers were becoming artists, scientists, philosophers. Species that had forgotten their own history were rediscovering who they had been before the war consumed everything. And above it all, the USS Star Destroyer kept its silent watch, a reminder of what humanity could do if forced, a promise of what they preferred to do instead. The war had lasted 80 million years. Building the peace would take even longer. But humanity had time. They had patience. And most importantly, they had hope. In the market below the ship, that Cathari child played with her friends, unaware that she was part of the first generation in 80 million years to grow up in peace. She laughed and ran and dreamed about the future. And that, Captain Rivera thought, was worth everything they had done. The galaxy had been given a second chance. Now it was up to them to take it. The story of the USS Star Destroyer would be told for millions of years. But the real story was just beginning. The story of a galaxy learning to hope again, learning to trust again, learning to dream of something better than endless war. Humanity had come to the stars and found a galaxy destroying itself. So they stopped it. Not because they wanted to rule, not because they sought glory, but because someone had to, and because that is what humans do. They hope, they help. They refuse to accept that things cannot be better, even when it takes 80 million years to prove it.